develop, the second responsibility of leadership. Have you ever noticed that some organizations seem to get better every year, while others spend years solving the exact same problem? The people work hard, the leaders are experienced, the products are good, yet nothing really improves. Every year brings the same frustrations, the same bottlenecks, the same conversations, and ultimately the same firefighting. And eventually someone says, we just need better people. Sometimes that's true, but most of the time it isn't. After more than 30 years leading operations, I've learned something that changed the way I think about leadership. Organizations don't improve because time passes. They improve because someone intentionally develops them. That's why I believe every leader has 3 responsibilities: lead, develop, and achieve. Today I want to talk about the one that is frequently overlooked: develop. Development is more than training. Ask 10 leaders what development means. Most will say training, mentoring, coaching, and all of those are certainly part of it. But development is much larger. Development is increasing capability. Capability to make decisions. Capability to solve problems. To innovate. To execute. To adapt. And to lead others. The question isn't, did we send someone to a class? The question is, the organization more capable today than it was yesterday? Great leaders develop more than people. People matter. In fact, they're at the center of every organization. But people don't work in isolation. They work inside systems, processes, technologies, measurements, policies, standards. If those things never improve, people eventually hit a ceiling. Great leaders simply don't develop employees. They develop everything that supports employees. That's why development touches every part of the organization. Development is an investment, not an expense. One of the easiest things to cut during difficult times is development. Training budgets disappear. Improvement projects get postponed. Leadership development is delayed. Innovation, well, that takes a back seat. On paper, it saves money. But in reality, it often delays the organization's future. Development is one of those investments that compounds. The organization becomes slightly better, then slightly better again, then slightly better yet again. Eventually, those small improvements become extraordinary capability. Organizations rarely drift toward excellence. They intentionally build it. Development creates capacity. One of the biggest mistakes leaders make is believing development is about fixing weakness. Sometimes it can be, but far more often, it's about creating capacity. Capacity to grow, capacity to serve more customers, capacity to solve bigger problems, capacity to innovate, and capacity to weather uncertainty. If your organization can't absorb growth without becoming overwhelmed, the problem usually isn't demand, it's capability. Development creates that capacity that growth requires. Development makes improvement sustainable. I've watched organizations launch improvement initiatives with tremendous enthusiasm. 6 months later, everything returned to normal. Why? Because they improved activity without improving capability. Lasting improvement occurs when people understand why, when processes improve, when standards improve, when leadership improves. When the system itself becomes stronger, that's development. Development is every leader's responsibility. One of the most damaging beliefs inside organizations is that development belongs to human resources. It doesn't. Human resources may coordinate development, but leaders create it. Every conversation, every coaching moment, every project, every after-action review, every difficult decision, every delegation opportunity, every improvement discussion. They're all opportunities to develop people. Leadership isn't simply accomplishing today's work. It's preparing people to accomplish tomorrow's. So, development creates better leaders. One of the greatest responsibilities leaders have is creating more leaders, not more followers. Organizations become fragile when leadership depends on a handful of individuals, or even one. They become resilient when leadership capability exists throughout the organization. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because leaders intentionally share responsibility. They delegate decisions, teach principles, allow some mistakes, and coach through challenges. Development multiplies leadership. And development never ends. Why? Because markets change, technology changes, customers change, competitors change. The organizations that survive aren't necessarily the biggest or the oldest. They're the ones that continue learning. Because development isn't an event. It isn't a seminar. It isn't an annual performance review. It's a way of operating every single day. The moment development stops, improvement usually stops shortly thereafter. So in closing, every leader has three responsibilities: lead, develop, and achieve. Leadership creates direction. Development builds capability. Achievement, it delivers results. Miss any one of those, and the organization eventually struggles. Developing isn't something leaders do when they have extra time. It's one of the primary reasons they exist, because the best leaders don't simply solve today's problems. They build organizations capable of solving tomorrow's. Here's one final question. If every member of your team returned to work tomorrow, would they simply have another day of experience? Or would they become just a little more capable than they were today? Because experience alone doesn't build organizations. Intentional development does.